I knew I shouldn't have been there. The endurance trial was never meant for Omegas, especially not for someone like me. My place was in the herb gardens, kneeling in soil, fingers stained with lavender and sage. Quiet, invisible, forgettable. That was the safest way to exist in Nightcrest, but Omegas don't get to decide anything. So when my name was barked across the training field, when the warriors shoved me forward with impatient snarls, and when the crowd began muttering, I knew this would end badly. I just didn't know how badly. The sun beat down like a hammer, hotter than it ever should have been in late autumn. My stomach cramped with hunger, 2 days without a full meal, and my legs already trembled from overwork at dawn. The herbal kitchens needed more winter roots harvested, so I had woken long before sunrise to carry twice my weight across the fields. I stood barefoot in the dirt, surrounded by warriors with shoulders twice as broad and lungs twice as strong. Their armor gleamed, their wolves snarled beneath their skin. I had, well, nothing. One warrior laughed loudly enough to carry. She won't last a minute. Another, a noble's son, scoffed. She's dead weight, should have left her in the gardens. My face burned, but I forced my back straight, forced my chin up, forced my body to pretend I wasn't hollowed out by exhaustion. If I showed weakness, the cruelty would only worsen. But the truth clawed beneath my ribs. I was already shaking, already too dizzy, already barely holding myself up. And then the trial horn sounded. Wolves roared, warriors surged forward, and my vision immediately narrowed to a tiny spinning tunnel. I willed my legs to move. I begged my body to not betray me. But every step felt like walking through water. My lungs burned. My head throbbed. My limbs trembled violently. I didn't even make it halfway across the field. Someone shoved me from behind hard. "Keep up, Omega." I stumbled, pain jolting through my knee, and the world lurched. Blood pounded in my ears. Everything blurred. Someone laughed, sharp, cruel. She can't even stay conscious. My breath hitched, and then my body simply stopped. No strength, no stability, no air, just sudden blackness eating the edges of the world. My knees buckled. The crowd gasped, some in shock, most in amusement. Wolves jeered, voices echoing strangely as the world tilted sideways and the dirt rushed up toward my cheek. I never hit the ground. A snarl ripped across the field. Deep, bone-shaking, ancient. The kind of sound that froze blood and silenced wolves. I didn't understand at first. My mind was slipping, darkness swallowing everything, but I felt arms around me, strong, unyielding, lifting me as if I weighed nothing. The crowd went silent. Completely. Utterly. A scent wrapped around me, dark cedar, cold rain, and something ancient that thrummed beneath my skin like distant thunder. Even in half-consciousness, my body recognized it. Alpha. No, not just any alpha. The Alpha. Theron Nightcrest. His voice cut through the fading haze, sharp with fury. Who allowed this? No one dared answer. His arms tightened around me, pulling me against the heat of his chest. I felt the tremor of his wolf beneath his skin, barely restrained. "She's starving," he snarled. "She's ill, and you threw her into this?" Someone muttered something, a weak excuse maybe, but another growl from Theron silenced them instantly. I tried to speak, but my mouth wouldn't open. My body wouldn't move. Everything grew heavier, warmer, darker. The last thing I felt was his heartbeat, steady, furious, alive, against my cheek. The last thing I heard was a vow, low and lethal. This will not happen again. And then, nothing. I expected to wake in the dirt, or the Omega barracks, or not wake at all. Instead, I woke gasping, in silk sheets softer than anything I had ever touched. A canopy of velvet hung overhead. My body was warm, too warm, and the scent of cedar smoke clung to the pillows around me. My eyes flew open. The Alpha King sat beside my bed. Jaw tight, arms crossed, eyes burning. His wolf still glowed behind his gaze as he leaned forward, voice low and deadly. "Who pushed you this far?" When consciousness returned, it didn't come gently. It came in pieces, like light filtering through thick fog, sound wrapped in cotton, breath scraping its way into my lungs as if I had to relearn how to inhale. I blinked against the blur. At first, all I saw was a ceiling of carved stone and soft, flickering lantern light. Then warm blankets, silk sheets, and the faint scent of cedar smoke clinging to my skin. This was not the Omega Barracks. I pushed up slightly on my elbows, only for dizziness to crash into me like a wave. My pulse spiked. The room swayed. A low voice cut through the haze. "Lie back." I froze. Not because of the command, but because of who it came from. Theron Nightcrest, Alpha King, the wolf who ruled the entire Northern Territory, stood a few feet away, arms crossed over a broad chest, eyes the color of a storm threatening to break. He wasn't supposed to be here. Not this close. Not watching me like that. His gaze slid down to my trembling hands, then back to my face, dark and unreadable. "You collapsed because someone failed you," he said quietly. "Who?" My mouth felt dry, my tongue heavy, my chest tight. Failed me? No one failed me. Not really. This was just normal, being pushed past my limits, working until I blacked out, eating only when scraps remained. Normal for Omegas, normal for me, but the way he asked the question, like it was a violation instead of routine, shredded something in my chest. I swallowed hard. I don't... My voice cracked. Embarrassment burned my cheeks. He took one step closer. "Lisa," he said, my name unexpectedly gentle on his tongue. "You didn't just faint. You were unconscious in my arms. You stopped responding." His jaw tightened. "You nearly died." My throat closed. He wasn't angry, he was furious. But not at me. At what had happened to me. I shook my head quickly, terrified he would misinterpret. "No one meant harm," I stammered. "The healer assigned to my sector, she said she could handle it." Theron's expression sharpened. "Handle what?" "The trial," I whispered. "She didn't want trouble." I twisted the sheets in my fists. "She was afraid of punishment if someone refused the Alpha's command." "The Alpha," he echoed, "did not command you." I flinched. "They said all Omegas had to participate this year." "They lied." My stomach clenched. His eyes softened, only by a fraction, but enough that I felt it like warmth against frostbitten skin. "You didn't need to prove anything," he said, voice quieter, heavier. "Especially not at the cost of your life." I looked away. I had spent years being overlooked, ignored, shoved to the back of the line. Part of me still couldn't believe he was speaking to me at all. Another part wanted to curl into myself and disappear. My voice barely carried. I didn't want to cause trouble. Theron's nostrils flared. His wolf was right beneath his skin. I could feel the pressure of it, like heat pulsing from him in waves. "You caused nothing," he growled. "You endured." He took another step forward, slow, controlled, as if approaching something fragile. "Tell me," he said, "why you were so weak you couldn't stand." The question wasn't cruel, it was truth-seeking, weighted, demanding. But when I opened my mouth, nothing came out. I couldn't tell him about the skipped meals, the bruised ribs from carrying too much weight, the nights spent working after everyone else slept. I didn't want to be the Omega who complained, so I simply stared at the blankets. His voice softened again. More than before. More than I thought the king was capable of. "Lysa." I looked up. Something unreadable flickered in his eyes. You don't need to fear me. A lie, but a comforting one. Before I could respond, a faint murmur drifted in from outside the chamber door. Why did the Alpha carry her? She's just an Omega. Why save someone so weak? My breath stuttered. Theron went still. Very still. His head turned slightly toward the door. His jaw clenched with such force I thought the stone floor might crack beneath us. They dare, he muttered under his breath, to question why I saved a dying woman. My heart hammered. He stepped closer to me, close enough that his scent wrapped around me again, dark cedar and rain. When he spoke, it wasn't a growl. It was something far more unsettling. Let them whisper, he said. I don't look away from what is mine to protect. Mine. The word sent chills racing through me, though I knew he didn't mean it the way my wolf wished he did. Still, something inside me shifted. Quietly. Dangerously. Theron lowered himself to one knee beside my bed. Rest, he said softly. You're safe here. And for the first time in years, maybe ever, I believed someone. I didn't want to be examined. I didn't want hands on me, or eyes scanning me, or whispers dissecting the things I had worked so hard to hide. But no one asks Omegas what they want. The healers rushed in as soon as Theron called for them. 3 older wolves in heavy robes, their expressions sharp and impatient. They didn't look at me the way someone looks at a patient. They looked at me the way someone looks at a broken tool they're annoyed to fix. One of them pressed cold fingers to my wrist. Another lifted my chin. A third pushed my shoulder down when I tried to sit up. Theron stood nearby, arms folded, jaw tight, eyes tracking every movement with predatory stillness. The first healer muttered under her breath, She has barely any food in her system. I flinched. The second scoffed. Her bones feel like twigs. She's too frail. She'll never shift. Heat flooded my cheeks. Shame sharp enough to sting. I wanted to pull the blankets over my head to disappear into the mattress, to pretend I wasn't hearing their judgment aloud for once instead of behind my back. The third healer sniffed the air near my throat. She smells like exhaustion and hunger. Nothing else. Theron moved. Just one step. But the room shifted around him like gravity bending. His wolf pushed forward, hot and volatile, its presence thick enough to raise the hairs on my arms. Explain, he said softly, but with a lethal edge that sliced through the air. The healers stiffened. Explain, he repeated, why an Omega under my rule has less nourishment than a dying wolf pup. No one answered. No one dared. I swallowed hard. My voice trembled. Your Majesty. Lisa. His gaze snapped to me immediately. Did someone restrict you? I couldn't lift my eyes. My fingers twisted into the sheets, knuckles white. No. The first healer scoffed. Her ribs show. Her pulse is weak. Someone is lying. Theron's voice dropped to something dark and dangerous. Who, he said, has been starving her? My heart punched against my ribs. I wanted to lie, to protect the others, to avoid being the Omega who caused trouble, to avoid the punishment that always came with sounding ungrateful. But my body betrayed me before my voice did. Tears pooled in my lashes. I shook my head weakly. No one, it's just, tell the truth. His tone was still quiet, still deadly. I exhaled a shuddering breath. Omegas. Eat last. My voice cracked. There's never much left. The silence that followed was suffocating. The healers exchanged uneasy glances. But Theron, he went completely still. Not like someone processing new information, like someone holding back the urge to tear the room apart. His scent darkened, rain before a violent storm. His shoulders rose with each furious inhale, the wolf in him pushing so close to the surface that the lantern flames flickered. Never, he said slowly, have I given an order that Omegas should eat last. That's Just how it is, one healer murmured hesitantly. Theron's head snapped toward him. His eyes flashed gold. Not anymore. A growl vibrated through the floorboards. The second healer tried to recover. Your Majesty, it's tradition. Omegas serve first. Warriors feed first. It has always. That tradition ends now. The words came out as a command that shook the air itself. I swallowed hard. Fear and something else. Something softer, mingling painfully in my chest. He wasn't doing this for power. He wasn't doing this for optics. He was doing this because for the first time, someone truly saw what was happening, and he didn't look away. He stepped closer to my bedside. Why didn't you tell anyone? I laughed, but the sound came out broken. Tell who? No one listens to us. Theron's jaw clenched. Then I will listen. The words lodged in my chest like a foreign object, unbelievable, fragile, terrifying in their sincerity. His wolf surged again, almost protective, almost possessive, and the healers instinctively lowered their heads. This pack starved her, he said, voice cold and sharp. They pushed her to collapse, and they dared to mock her weakness. He inhaled slowly, controlling the snarl tearing at his throat. They will answer for this. I shook my head quickly. Please, don't punish anyone because of me. His gaze snapped to mine, fierce and unforgiving. Because of you? His voice thickened. Lisa, they nearly killed you. He sat on the edge of my bed, lowering his voice but not his intensity. You suffered because no one cared enough to intervene. A pause. But I am intervening now. My breath hitched. His attention was a weight, a force, a warmth I wasn't used to receiving. Fragile protection, blooming in a space where I had only known neglect. Theron leaned slightly closer, eyes softer but no less relentless. You are not invisible here, he murmured, not to me. And just like that, the cruelty of the pack felt a little less suffocating, and the Alpha King's attention felt like the first sunlight after years of winter. The healers left eventually, whispers trailing behind them like smoke, but the damage their probing had done lingered in my chest. Every word they'd spoken still rang in my ears. Too frail, never shift, barely nourished. And Theron's fury simmering under every breath didn't help my balance. For a long moment after they exited, he simply stood there, silent, unmoving, staring at the door like he wanted to rip it off its hinges for daring to close, in front of his anger. I tried to pretend I wasn't shaking. My heart thudded in weak, uneven beats. My fingers curled instinctively into the blanket. A strange pressure built behind my ribs. Not pain, but something hotter, heavier, threaded with an emotion I didn't have a name for. I needed air. Your Majesty, I whispered. I should sit up. His gaze snapped to me immediately, sharper than a blade. You should rest. I need to. The moment I lifted myself off the pillows, the room tilted. My vision smeared into streaks of light and shadow. My breath hitched, and the edges of everything swayed violently. I didn't even have time to panic. Theron crossed the small space between us in a blur. His hands cupped my arms before my body could pitch forward. Heat enveloped me. Scent, strength, certainty. My legs buckled completely, and I would have crashed to the floor if he hadn't caught me. Again. But this time, something inside him snapped. A sound reverberated through his chest. A low, rumbling growl, deep and primal, rolled across the room like thunder held too tightly. My breath stilled. Not from fear, but from shock. Because that sound wasn't meant for me. It was meant for anyone, everyone who put me in this state. Heat radiated from his skin, flooding into mine. His scent, dark cedar, storm wind, and something ancient, wrapped around me so intensely it made my lungs struggle to catch up. Lisa, he said, voice rough with barely controlled instinct, you're not steady. I swallowed, dizzy from more than physical weakness. I'm fine. You're not. The words came out as a growl, not a correction. He didn't give me time to argue. His arms slid beneath my knees and back. And he lifted me again, just swept me up as though I weighed nothing. My breath caught, my hands flying up instinctively to brace against his chest. I could feel his heartbeat. Too fast, too strong, too much. He held me against him, muscles tense, using his own body as a barrier between me and the floor, as if gravity itself had offended him by daring to pull me down. Theron, I whispered, stunned beyond measure. But he didn't put me down. Didn't even consider it. His wolf was too close. I could feel it. The pressure of its presence. The heat under his skin. The way his breath trembled as he fought to stay in control. I told you to rest, he said, voice low, vibrating through my bones. But no. One word. Absolute. Final. The healers, lingering near the entryway, froze as he turned toward them, still holding me. Their eyes widened, horrified and awestruck at the same time. One of them whispered, barely audible, no one is ever carried by the king. Another muttered, His Majesty hasn't touched anyone like that since. And then she cut herself off quickly. Theron didn't spare them a glance, but his wolf heard. I felt it surge under his skin. Another growl rumbling into the crown of my head where he held me close. Instinct. Pure, unfiltered instinct. Possessive in a way that made heat crawl up my neck despite myself. Protective in a way I had never seen directed at an Omega. Pained in a way I didn't understand yet. His grip around me tightened, not painfully, but fiercely, like he feared I might vanish if he loosened even a fraction. Set her down, one healer dared to whisper, voice trembling. Your Majesty, she may be uncomfortable. Theron's eyes flashed gold. She will tell me if she's uncomfortable, he snapped, the air trembling with the force of his voice. I felt every gaze in the room land on me, waiting, judging, disbelieving. My heart pounded, but not with fear. I'm not uncomfortable, I whispered. Theron exhaled sharply, relief and restraint mixing into a single ragged breath. Without breaking eye contact with the room full of wolves who suddenly didn't dare breathe, he carried me back to the bed with deliberate, reverent movements and lowered me onto the pillows like something precious. Not fragile, not weak, precious. His fingers lingered a moment too long at my wrist, absorbing my pulse, grounding his own. Why? Why was he reacting like this? My thoughts spiraled, but the only thing that came out was a soft, trembling question. Your Majesty, what's happening? He stared down at me, breathing hard, golden eyes burning with something he wasn't ready to speak aloud. Finally, he answered, voice hoarse, honest, unguarded. My wolf reacts to you. A pause. Stronger than he should. Something shifted in my chest. Something warm, terrifying, and entirely new. And when his eyes held mine, one truth settled between us. Something was forming, something neither of us chose, something neither of us could fight. The room had finally begun to settle. The healers stepped back. The pack's murmurs faded through the closed doors. Theron stood near the foot of the bed, arms crossed. Jaw locked so tightly I could see the pulse throb against the edge of his throat. But the tension didn't leave his shoulders, not even for a breath. I thought the worst was over. I thought this moment, this strange, trembling calm, meant I could breathe again. I was wrong. Because when Elder Halvir entered the chamber, everything inside me tightened like a knot pulled too fast. He was old, older than anyone else in Nightcrest, his silver hair falling in thin lines down his back, his eyes clouded but still terrifyingly sharp. Wolves bowed to him out of instinct, even Theron, but as he stepped forward, he didn't bow to the king. He didn't even acknowledge him. His entire body angled toward me, toward the bed, toward the air around me. A low hum filled the room, the subtle, ancient energy that only elders could wield. My fingers curled into the sheets, and my breath caught without warning. Something about the way he moved, the way his expression shifted from curiosity to concern to an emotion I couldn't place, made my skin prickle. Elder, Theron greeted tightly. She needs healing, not inspection. Halvir lifted a hand to silence him. The king bristled, and I swallowed hard. The elder stepped closer. The air grew heavier. He didn't touch me. He didn't have to. He inhaled softly, one slow breath through his nose, and everything stopped. He went completely still. No twitch, no blink, no breath, just frozen. His eyes, those milky, ancient eyes, widened in horror, or awe, or both. My heart pounded painfully in my chest. Whoa, what is it? Halvir didn't answer me. His gaze locked on Theron, and for the first time since I'd woken, the king's expression faltered. Elder, Theron repeated, voice sharpening, speak. But the elder wasn't looking at him anymore. He was looking through him, as if he'd seen this moment before, as if he feared it. Finally, Halvir exhaled, shaky, disbelieving. She carries moonlight, he whispered. The room shifted. My breath vanished. Theron's entire body stiffened. Halvir took another trembling breath, this one deeper, pulling my scent into the air, like it contained an answer he'd been searching for his entire life. Moonlight. Dormant, he murmured. Hidden. Walled away. My skin prickled. Something deep within my chest fluttered, like a spark trapped under ice. I don't understand, I whispered. He turned his head slightly toward me, voice gentler but no less shaken. You were never scentless, child, never weak, never empty. His gaze softened. Your wolf sleeps, not because it is absent, but because it is waiting. Waiting. For what? Theron stepped closer to the elder, tension rolling off him in waves. What are you saying? He demanded. Halvir swallowed, his throat bobbing, his voice dropping to a reverent whisper. The last time I sensed this. He paused, breath trembling. The moonseer was alive. Silence crashed into the room. My vision blurred. A cold rush swept through me, followed by a heat I didn't understand, like something ancient brushed against the inside of my ribs. Theron froze like stone. His voice cracked open, raw, unguarded. My grandmother? The elder nodded slowly. The king took a step back. I took a breath that didn't feel like mine. Moonseer. The title echoed through me, stirring something beneath my skin. I had grown up hearing stories of her, whispers from elders who spoke of a woman with glowing hands and silver eyes, a queen who could see hidden threads of fate, a wolf who only shifted when prophecy demanded it. But she died long before I was born. And with her, the bloodline was believed to have vanished. It's impossible, Theron murmured. The Moonseer's line ended with her. Halvir turned fully toward him. Apparently, King of Nightcrest, it did not. My heartbeat stuttered, painfully. I can't. My throat closed. I'm not anything like her. Halvir's expression gentled, but his voice remained firm. Power that sleeps often looks like weakness, until the moment it wakes. His gaze flicked to my hands, my trembling, useless hands, and something in his expression tightened. You smell of moonfire, he whispered, of prophecy not yet risen. I shook my head. You must be mistaken. Theron's voice cut through the air, rough, low, shaken in a way I'd never imagined. Moonseer blood chooses who it hides in. Halvir bowed, slowly, solemnly. To carry such a scent, he said softly to me, is destiny, whether you wished for it or not. And in that moment, for the first time, I didn't know if the tremor inside me came from fear or from something ancient stirring awake. I had barely begun to breathe again. The elder's revelation still clung to the air like incense, thick, strange, impossible. The moonseer's blood, moonlight dormant, fate stirring. I didn't know what any of it meant. I didn't have time to understand, because the chamber doors slammed open so hard the walls shook. A group of noble women swept inside like a storm made of silk and venom. Their jeweled collars glittered, their expressions carved into identical masks of contempt. One of them, Lady Vespera, the most feared woman in the court, pointed a long, lacquered finger straight at me. "There she is," she hissed, "the deceitful little Omega who bewitched His Majesty." My breath caught. Bewitched? Before I could speak, another noblewoman scoffed loud enough to echo. "Look at her," she sneered. "She can't even stand without shaking. She collapsed like a child seeking attention." A third laughed, a cold, brittle sound. "She fainted on purpose, threw herself at the king, and he, soft-hearted fool, fell for it. She tricked him." Her words sliced through me. I didn't trick anyone. I barely had enough strength to stand. I didn't want anyone's attention, especially not the king's. My pulse hammered painfully as I tried to speak. I didn't. "Silence," Vespera snapped. "You will address no one unless spoken to." Something inside me flinched. Years of conditioning, years of being spoken at, never listened to. The room grew colder. Theron didn't even lift his head, but the muscles in his jaw tightened like he was holding back something violent. Vespera stepped closer, her smile as sharp as a blade. "She should be removed from the palace at once," she announced, "before she taints the trial, before she further embarrasses the crown." A ripple of agreement moved through the gathered nobles. "She's dangerous. She's unstable. She reeks of witchcraft. She might harm the king." I shook my head, throat burning. I would never. "She speaks now," someone muttered with a cruel laugh. "How bold. The little garden rat thinks her voice matters." Heat scorched behind my eyes. I wished I were invisible. I wished I hadn't collapsed. I wished none of this had happened. Then, a snarl tore through the chamber. Not a growl. A snarl. Deep, ancient, feral. The sound made every noblewoman freeze. Even the walls felt like they flinched. Theron stepped forward, slowly, dangerously. His wolf rose beneath his skin, rippling through his voice as he spoke, low, lethal, and shaking with barely contained fury. "Speak," he growled. "One more word against her." The air fractured. Just one. Vespera paled. I had never seen the Alpha King truly furious before. Not like this. Not controlled anger, not quiet disappointment. This was something else. A force of nature. "All of you," Theron continued, his voice cutting like thunder, "forget your places when you speak of me." He took another step, and several noblewomen stepped back without meaning to. "But you forget even more," he said, voice dropping lower, darker. "When you speak of her." My breath caught. His gaze flicked to me just for a heartbeat, but the look in his eyes made something inside my chest tremble. Possessive, violent, uncompromising, his wolf was showing. "She is under my protection," he said, each word a warning. "My wolf has chosen to guard her, and I do not question my wolf." A pulse of energy rippled through the room. Halvir, the elder, bowed his head slightly, as though acknowledging what everyone else refused to see. Vespera swallowed hard. "Your Majesty, she is an Omega, a weak one, easily manipulated. We are only thinking of your safety." Theron's lips pulled back, showing teeth that were distinctly not human. "Say that again," he murmured, and you'll learn exactly what my wolf does to liars." Silence slammed through the chamber so violently I felt the wind of it. No one dared to breathe. No one dared to speak. For a long, fragile moment, the only sound in the room was my heartbeat echoing in my ears. I didn't know if it was fear, gratitude, or something else that made my throat tighten. The noblewomen bowed their heads, shaking, defeated. They backed away. They left. And when the chamber doors shut behind them, the force of the silence that followed felt like a different world entirely. Theron's voice softened, barely, but it no longer belonged to the king. It belonged to the man whose wolf had growled for me. "No one," he said quietly, firmly, "gets to decide your worth. Not them. Not the pack. Not anyone." He glanced toward me. His eyes, storm gray, sharp, unyielding, held mine like a vow. "Especially not me," he added. "Not anymore." My breath slipped out in a shaky exhale, because for the first time in my life, someone had defended me. Not because I earned it, not because I asked, but because, for reasons neither of us yet understood, I mattered. I needed air. I needed space. I needed to get away from the eyes, the whispers, the suffocating heat of the king's presence. The noble's hatred still clung to my skin like grease. My heart hammered with leftover fear, shame, and something else. Something too warm, too confusing whenever Theron looked at me for too long. I should go," I whispered, sliding off the healing cot. "I don't belong here." Theron didn't look convinced. His arms were crossed, jaw clenched like he was fighting an argument he didn't want to start. "You're not leaving," he said quietly. "I have to," I murmured. "I'm not supposed to be in the royal wing. I don't want to cause trouble." "You think trouble wasn't already caused the moment you collapsed?" he snapped, then winced as if frustrated with himself. "Lisa, just wait." But I couldn't. If I stayed any longer, the weight of everything, the nobles, the elder's prophecy, Theron's wolf snarling for me, would crush me whole. I slipped past him before he could stop me, the hem of my borrowed robe brushing the floor. The moment my foot crossed the threshold, something snapped. Not outside. Inside. Deep. Violent. Unseen. A sound tore from Theron's chest, half snarl, half choked gasp, as he doubled over, clutching his ribs. I froze. Theron! My voice cracked. His hand slammed against the wall, steadying himself, his eyes flashing molten silver. The healers jerked toward him in alarm. "Your Majesty?" one cried. "Get her!" Theron growled between clenched teeth. "Back inside." The words hit me like a blow. What? Why? But the answer came not from him. It came from the healers, their voices rising like a horrified chorus. "The Alpha is scent bonded." My breath stopped. Scent bonded? No. No, that was impossible. That was something reserved for mates, for fated pairs, for wolves connected by destiny or divine will. Not an Omega. Not me. But Theron's pain was real. He was fighting for breath, his hand digging into the wood so hard cracks spiderwebbed under his palm. His chest heaved like someone had tied a rope around his ribs and was pulling toward me. I stumbled backward inside the threshold without thinking. Theron's pain broke instantly. He straightened. Breath steadied. Shoulders loosened. His eyes, still silver, lifted to mine with something between shock and disbelief. "It's you," he said hoarsely. I felt the words everywhere, down my spine, in my palms, in the hollow ache of my ribs. Because something inside me answered. A tug, a soft ache, like the faintest thread stretched tight between us. "No," I whispered. "No, this can't be happening." One healer stepped forward, voice trembling. "Scent bonds don't lie," she said. "If the Alpha feels pain when she leaves the radius, there is no mistake." Theron stared at me as if the world he'd ruled for years had just shifted under his feet. His voice was low, rough. I shouldn't be able to scent bond. Not without intent. Not without the moon's blessing. Not without... He stopped. Not without a destined mate. No one dared say it aloud. My legs shook so hard I had to grip the doorframe to stay upright. I didn't do anything, I said, breath coming in shallow bursts. I didn't ask for a bond. I didn't even know. I know, he murmured, and it was the gentlest thing he had ever said. But that gentleness only made everything worse. I stepped forward in a daze, trying to understand the sensation tugging at my chest. When I moved closer to Theron, the ache inside me quieted. When I took a step farther away, it sharpened again like a warning. It was real. This bond, whatever it was, had formed outside our will, outside our logic, outside anything I had ever believed possible. The healers exchanged glances heavy with meaning. Alpha, one whispered, this kind of bond, it is ancient, sacred, not created lightly, not formed by accident. Theron swallowed hard. So you're saying that her presence now affects your wolf as profoundly as your own heartbeat? Terror and awe rippled through me. He took a step toward me. The tug between us tightened, but with it came a strange warmth. A sense of safety so strong it frightened me more than anything else had tonight. I didn't choose this, I whispered. Neither did I, he said quietly. The truth of it settled between us, trembling, fragile, undeniable. But now, he continued, voice lowering, we face it together. I felt it then, the invisible thread pulling taut, tying us, binding something deeper than scent, deeper than instinct, deeper than fear. The scent bond, the bond that shouldn't exist, the bond that had already changed everything. I didn't expect him to come back. I especially didn't expect him to return alone, carrying a silver tray in his hands like he wasn't the most feared alpha in the realm, like he wasn't the kind of man warriors whispered about in the dark. But there he was. Theron pushed open the chamber door with his shoulder, stepping inside the moonlit room with a kind of quiet heaviness and determination. The scent bond hummed faintly in the air between us, invisible thread tugging at my ribs, keeping my chest strangely warm. He set the tray on the small table beside my bed. Not a servant, not a healer. Him. Steam drifted from the bowl, roasted roots, herb broth, fresh bread. Food far richer than anything an Omega like me had ever been allowed to touch. I sat up slowly, unsure what to say, unsure how to breathe. He didn't speak right away. He just watched me for a moment, jaw tight, eyes unreadable. Then he dropped into the chair beside the bed. Too tense, too close, too much. Eat, he said softly, before you fall over again. I picked up the spoon with trembling fingers. My hand shook so hard broth nearly sloshed out. I forced a mouthful, down. Warmth spread through my chest, down my empty stomach, like a soft ache unwinding. Theron's eyes followed every motion. After a moment, he spoke. Tell me who hurt you. The words weren't a command, they were a plea. My breath hitched. No one hurt me. Lisa. His tone sharpened, just enough to tug my attention. The truth. I stared down at the bowl. The scent bond pulsed faintly, nudging me, not forcing, but urging, toward honesty. Tears pricked the back of my eyes. I wasn't supposed to collapse, I whispered. I tried. Really hard. I know, he murmured. You pushed yourself until you broke. That's what Omegas do, I said quietly. We endure. His breath caught, like the word itself cut him. I swallowed hard and kept going, because now that I'd started, the truth spilled like water through cracked pottery. We get whatever food is left after the higher ranks finish. Some days there's nothing. I learned to get used to it. Theron's knuckles whitened against the arm of the chair. And the work. My voice trembled. I work in the herb gardens from dawn until past moonrise. Sometimes they forget to dismiss me. Sometimes they don't forget. They just don't care. Theron's jaw flexed dangerously. I forced another spoonful down, the warmth of the broth almost painful against the emptiness inside me. There were days, I continued, when the world would go blurry around the edges, and I'd pretend it was just the heat, or the cold, or the long hours. You pretended, he repeated, voice rough, because no one looked long enough to see the truth. I bit my lip. Because if an Omega complains, I whispered, she gets punished. Theron went absolutely still. The silence between us sharpened. Punished how? His voice was low, lethal. I shook my head quickly, panicked. I'm not trying to cause trouble. I didn't ask if you wanted trouble. His eyes burned into mine. I asked who hurt you. My fingers knotted in the blanket. The overseer, I admitted in a whisper. She doesn't like me. Says I'm weak. Says weak wolves need to be reminded of their place. What did she do? His voice shook. The truth came out in small, trembling pieces. She takes my rations, gives me double shifts, makes me pick herbs by hand until my fingers bleed. A low growl rumbled from his chest, quiet but deadly enough to vibrate through the floorboards. She made you collapse, he said, voice like stone cracking. She starved you into the dirt. I didn't want you to be angry, I whispered. He rose from the chair so suddenly the air shifted. His shadow fell across me, massive and trembling with barely contained fury. But his voice, when he finally spoke, was a whisper so gentle it broke me open. Lisa, I'm not angry at you. He sank to one knee beside the bed, an alpha king kneeling, eyes filled with something raw and aching. I'm angry because I failed you, because my pack failed you, because no Omega in my kingdom should live like that. Tears spilled before I could stop them. His hand hovered near my cheek but didn't touch. Not until I leaned the smallest bit forward. Then he cupped my face with a tenderness I didn't know he possessed. Let me fix this, he murmured. Let me protect you. Let me do what I should have done long before your body broke in front of my eyes. The scent bond thrummed between us, warm and soft and terrifying. I closed my eyes, breathing him in. For the first time in my life, I felt seen, and worse. I felt wanted. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every breath felt too loud, every shadow too sharp. The scent bond hummed faintly under my skin, a pulse, a tug, a whisper of something ancient threading itself through my ribs. Theron had insisted I rest in the private healing chambers, the safest place in the palace. Guards patrolled outside like shadows. Yet my body wouldn't relax, no matter how soft the sheets or how warm the fire burned. Something inside me was uneasy, alive, awake. I pressed a hand to my chest, trying to steady my breathing. Then I heard it. Not footsteps, not voices. A feeling, cold, crawling, wrong, skittering along the edge of my senses. The candles flickered. The corridor outside went unnaturally still. Then, a low growl rippled through the air. I sat bolt upright. Theron? Before I could call again, the chamber doors slammed open, not by Theron, but by two guards stumbling in, terror in their faces. Rogues, one gasped. Inside the palace. My blood froze. The second guard leaned against the doorframe, panting. They slipped in through the northern wall. They're hunting something. Hunting what? I whispered. His eyes lifted to mine, wide, terrified. The moon scent. My body turned to ice. They were hunting me. Before I could process the words, before I could even breathe, a roar shattered the corridor. Not human. Not controlled. a sound I felt in my bones. Theron. The guards spun toward the noise, but he appeared before they could react. Stormdark, furious, eyes glowing with silver lightning. He didn't speak, didn't pause. He moved straight toward me. His chest heaved, breaths ragged, scent sharp enough to choke the air. Lisa, he growled, voice barely human, behind me. I scrambled off the bed just as something slammed into the outer wall. Dust rained from the ceiling. The guards swore and reached for their weapons. Footsteps, snarls, more than one, maybe more than 5. My fingers shook violently. Theron stepped into the center of the chamber, placing himself between me and the approaching danger. His power filled the room like a storm ready to break. He didn't look at the guards. He didn't look at the door. He looked at me. "You stay behind me," he said, voice a rumbling command that rooted me to the floor. "You don't move unless I tell you to. Do you understand?" My throat tightened. Yes. His gaze softened, barely, but enough to warm my skin even as fear clawed at my spine. "Good," he murmured. "I won't let them touch you." The door exploded inward. Snarling shapes lunged through. Rogue wolves, lean and vicious, eyes wild with hunger. Not ordinary rogues. These were trained, directed, sent with purpose, sent for the moon scent, sent for me. The nearest wolf launched at Theron, and the Alpha King, my Alpha King, shifted mid-stride. Bones cracked, fur erupted, power thundered through the chamber. One moment, he was a man. The next, he was a massive night black wolf, fangs dripping, eyes glowing with lethal promise. The rogues crashed into him and were thrown back like leaves in a storm. I stumbled against the wall, breath knocked from my chest as the scent bond snapped taut. It pulsed like a living heartbeat, pulling me toward him, urging me to stay close. Theron's wolf swung his head toward me, protective, feral, desperate. Another rogue darted between the guards, snarling, bounding straight for me. I didn't even scream. Theron reached it first. He tore it away from me with a roar that shook the floor, clamping his jaws around its shoulder and hurling it into the far wall. Blood spattered across the stone. I sank to the ground, trembling uncontrollably, hands clutched to my chest. The rogues hesitated, fear rippling through them. Theron's wolf stood in front of me, huge and shaking with fury, tail low, fangs bared. His hackles rose, filling the room with dominance so intense the air vibrated. Then, his voice, half wolf, half man, tore through the chaos. "They do not touch," he snarled, stalking forward. "What is mine?" The bond between us flared, a heat that wrapped around my ribs like an embrace, like a shield. My lungs filled for the first time since the attack began. Mine, not a possession, not a claim, a vow, a promise carved from the oldest magic of his bloodline. The rogues faltered. The guards advanced. And Theron, my protector, my storm, lunged at the invaders with a rage so fierce it made the torches tremble. Fear still clung to me, but through it pulsed something steadier. Unity. Connection. A thread tying my heartbeat to his. In that moment, under danger, under moonlight, I realized I wasn't facing this attack alone. I never would again. I don't remember walking into the moon archives. One moment I was trembling in the aftermath of the rogue attack, my pulse still sinking painfully with Theron's enraged wolf, and the next, I was being guided through a torchlit hall lined with silver-lit murals and carved stone wolves that seemed to watch me breathe. The elder moved ahead of us, clutching a sealed scroll case wrapped in moon thread. Theron stayed beside me, close, close enough that our arms brushed every few steps, close enough that his scent kept my lungs steady. He didn't speak, neither did I. Something heavy hung between us. Fear, yes, but also a quiet, thrumming recognition neither of us dared name. At the end of the hall, The elder turned, his face pale beneath the flickering torchlight. "This," he whispered, fingers trembling over the wax seal, "has not been opened in 30 years. It was locked when the Moonseer line was declared dead." My heart stuttered. Why are you showing it to me?" His gaze slid to me, then lower, to the faint shimmer still pulsing across my collarbone where the moon scent had flared during the attack. "Because," he said softly, "your wolf has not awakened yet, and only one lineage in our history is known to bear such a dormant divinity." My breath caught painfully. He broke the seal. The scroll unfurled, ancient ink glowing faintly like starlight caught on parchment. Symbols I didn't understand curled across its surface. Wolves crowned in moonfire, a woman with silver eyes, the outline of a glowing wolf far larger than a normal shift. The elder pointed to a name I knew. "Your grandmother," he said, voice barely a whisper. "Lyria of the Moonseers, the last of her kind." The floor seemed to tilt under my feet. "That's impossible," I breathed. "My grandmother died when I was an infant. She was just a healer?" The elder finished gently. "Yes, as all Moonseers were, before they were hunted." The words hit like cold water. "Hunted." The elder nodded, sorrow tightening his features. "Because their wolves were too powerful, too divine, too unpredictable. They were feared. And fear breeds violence." My hands shook. I had always felt small, breakable, unwanted. But now the world was shifting around me, revealing cracks that had been there all along. The elder turned the scroll so I could see the last passage, script painted in faint silver. "A dormant divine wolf," he read aloud, voice trembling with reverence. "Awakening only when the kingdom's balance breaks, born fragile, born hidden, born to rise when destiny calls." My lungs forgot how to work. Dormant, divine, hidden. Every word felt like it burned through my ribs. Theron stepped closer, his presence grounding, steadying. He moved in front of me, lowering himself to his knees, an alpha king kneeling for a trembling Omega. His eyes locked onto mine. Dark, fierce, full of something that made my breath quiver. "Lysa," he said quietly, "look at me." I forced my gaze to hold his. "You were never weak," he murmured. "You were never less." He reached out, hesitated, then let his fingertips graze my wrist. "You were hidden, protected, because something in you is sacred." My throat tightened violently. Sacred. Me? The girl who collapsed in dirt? Who ate leftovers? Who was laughed at by children? My voice shook. "But why me?" He exhaled softly, something like awe slipping through his control. "Because your wolf isn't just asleep," he said. "She's waiting. And she responded tonight, when you were in danger." He swallowed hard. "And when I was." That last part made my chest ache. I lowered my eyes to the scroll again. Moonseer, a divine wolf, a lineage erased by fear, a power that only awakened under destiny's hand, and I was descended from it. "I don't know how to be someone like that," I whispered. Theron's fingers slid from my wrist to my hand, warm and grounding. "You don't have to know yet," he said. "Just let yourself believe this." His thumb brushed my knuckles. "You were never meant to be ordinary." My eyes stung. The elder bowed his head. "The Moonseer bloodline lives. Fate has returned her." Returned. Not misplaced. Not mistaken. Returned. Slowly, painfully, beautifully. Acceptance began to warm the cold edges of my fear. For the first time in my life, I wasn't collapsing under the weight of my weakness. I was rising, even if my legs trembled, even if my voice shook. Theron squeezed my hand once, gently. "This is who you are," he whispered. and I finally let myself breathe. I thought the archives had taken all the strength I had left, but the trial of truth demanded something far greater. By the time Theron led me into the Great Hall, my legs were shaking so badly I wondered if I'd collapse again. The torches burned brighter than usual, throwing gold light across stone walls and banners. Hundreds of eyes turned toward me. Wolves, who had ignored me, mocked me, forgotten I existed. Now they stared as though I carried starlight on my skin. Maybe I did. The faint silver glow of the moon-seer aura shimmered along my collarbone, pulsing with every breath. Theron felt it too. His hand hovered behind me, not touching but close enough that his warmth steadied my steps. His presence alone kept the ground under my feet from tilting. At the center of the hall, the accused nobles stood chained in moon-forged cuffs, their expressions twisted when they saw me approach. "She shouldn't even be here," one hissed. "A trial for an Omega?" Another scoffed. "Absurd." But their bravado faltered the moment Theron's wolf growl rolled through the hall, low, deadly, and promising devastation. The elder stepped forward. "Let the trial of truth begin." A hush fell. Theron's voice sliced through the silence like a blade. "Charges," he announced, gaze burning into the nobles. "Starving an Omega under my protection. Denying her food for years. Forcing her into a warrior trial meant to kill. Plotting to keep her weak. And conspiring to silence her collapse to avoid punishment." Gasps rippled through the crowd. I felt every eye shift to me, to the girl they once laughed at, the one always at the end of the food line, the one they assumed wouldn't make it to 20. My nails dug into my palms. The elder gestured to me gently. "Speak, child." My heart lurched painfully. I wasn't a fighter. I wasn't bold. I wasn't strong. But if I didn't speak now, the wolves who hurt me would hurt others next. Maybe Omega's younger than me. Maybe wolves even weaker. I swallowed hard. My name is Lisa," I began, my voice barely above a whisper. Someone snickered. But then, the moon-seer aura behind me flared. Silver light breathed outward like a veil unfolding, catching the corner of every eye in the room. The snickering stopped. A hush rippled deeper, heavy as the moment before a storm breaks. "I wasn't supposed to survive the endurance trial," I said softly. They pushed me into it, knowing I could barely stand. Murmurs began. Shock, outrage, disbelief. I forced myself to keep going. They made sure I had less food, less rest. My throat tightened. Most days I cleaned for hours with nothing but scraps, sometimes nothing at all. A few wolves lowered their heads in shame. The nobles stiffened, rage twisting their features, but the chains kept them silent. "I didn't tell anyone," I whispered. "Because Omegas don't get listened to. We're told to endure, to take what we're given." My breath broke. I felt Theron move closer, but he didn't interrupt. He let me stand in my truth. For years, I thought I was weak. I looked at the nobles, really looked at them. I thought I deserved the hunger, the hollow bones, the fainting. A tear slipped down my cheek, hot and humiliating. "But I wasn't weak," I whispered. "You just made me believe I was." The moon-seer aura glowed brighter. The entire hall inhaled sharply. I didn't understand the magic, but I felt it. It wrapped around my words, carrying them further than my trembling voice ever could. The elder's eyes widened. "Her aura speaks truth." Theron stepped forward, tall, furious, unstoppable. "The Omega you nearly killed is moon-seer-born," he growled, "divine-blooded, chosen by the moon itself." Silence slammed through the hall. One noble choked. "Impossible!" Theron's roar drowned him out. "You starved a sacred lineage. You tried to break the wolf the moon hid to protect." Every wolf in the hall dropped their gaze. The air vibrated with fear. with realization, with the irreversible weight of what they had done. Theron turned to me, his voice softening like storm clouds thinning just enough for a sliver of light. Lisa, do you want to give your final word? My breath trembled. I looked at the nobles, those who had put sickness in my veins, darkness in my bones, fear in my heartbeat. And I said quietly, but firmly, I forgive myself for believing your lies. I steadied my spine. But I will not forgive you for what you did to others like me. Gasps, whispers, reverent awe. Theron's chest rose, pride and fury, warring in his expression. The trial is concluded, he announced. Judgment falls now. The hall erupted, wolves demanding justice, the elder invoking ancient punishment rites. The nobles' faces drained of color. There was no going back. Truth had been spoken, and justice, finally, was here. The trial ended with torches dimming and wolves murmuring among themselves, shock, shame, awe mingling in the air like smoke. But when Theron turned to me and murmured, "Come," something in his voice made my pulse stutter. Not command, not authority. Something quieter, something raw. He led me away from the great hall and through a side passage I'd never seen before, a narrow stone corridor lit only by moonlight drifting through high windows. We walked in silence, not the uncomfortable kind, the kind where something enormous sat between us, waiting to be named. Finally, Theron pushed open a heavy door and guided me into a small moonlit terrace overlooking the forest. The night air kissed my skin, cool and smelling faintly of pine. I wrapped my arms around myself. Theron didn't speak at first. He just stood near the railing, shoulders tense, jaw clenched like he was holding back something dangerous. The bond tugged softly between us, warm, alive, pulsing with every breath. I swallowed. Your Majesty. Theron, he cut in quietly. Here. It's just Theron. The name trembled on my tongue. Theron. A sound escaped him, half exhale, half groan, like he'd been starving to hear it. He turned then, and the look in his eyes nearly made my knees give out again. Storm dark. Wounded. Unmasked. I had never seen an Alpha King look like that. Lysa, he said, voice hoarse. I need you to understand something. My heart thudded painfully. What is it? He stepped closer, not too close, just enough that I could feel the heat of him, the way his wolf hovered just beneath his skin, restless and protective. When your body gave out, he began slowly, my wolf broke. My breath caught. He shut his eyes for a moment, lashes trembling. I felt it, the moment you hit the ground. A tearing inside me, a rage I couldn't control. He swallowed hard. I didn't understand it then. I only knew that I had to get to you, that if anyone else touched you, I'd tear the world apart. My lips parted, shocked. His gaze locked onto mine, fierce and unflinching. And when you opened your eyes in my chambers, he whispered, when your scent filled the room. He exhaled shakily. I knew I couldn't let you walk away. Heat surged beneath my skin, confusing and overwhelming. But you didn't even know who I was, I whispered. He let out a rough laugh, pained, helpless. I knew enough. He stepped even closer, slowly, carefully, like approaching something sacred. You were fragile, starving, collapsing, but you stood in front of your abusers today as though the moon was behind. You. His voice deepened. I've seen warriors with less courage. I looked down, trembling. I'm not courageous. Lysa. My name sounded like a vow in his mouth. You survived. That alone makes you extraordinary. The wind rustled my hair, cool against my burning cheeks. Theron drew a shaking breath. The bond. His voice cracked. I felt it long before the healers named it. I froze. I tried to ignore it, he admitted softly. tried to convince myself it was instinct, duty, a king protecting his pack. A pause, a low, raw confession. But nothing in me wanted to protect the others the way I wanted to protect you. My throat tightened painfully. Theron. He took another step, close enough now that I could feel the heat of his chest, his breath brushing my forehead. But then, he did something that stole the air from my lungs. He lowered his head. Not physically kneeling, emotionally kneeling. His posture softened, shoulders dipping, chin bowing just slightly, a gesture no alpha would ever give lightly. "My wolf," he whispered, voice shaking, "bows to you." Tears stung my eyes. No one had ever bowed to me. No one had ever even looked at me without ridicule. And now the Alpha King, the most feared wolf in the realm, stood in front of me stripped of armor, stripped of power, offering something raw and vulnerable, his truth. I reached out before I could stop myself. My fingers grazed his cheek. He inhaled sharply, like the touch set his soul on fire. The bond between us pulsed, bright and undeniable, not a chain, not a burden, a connection, a calling, a promise. "Theron," I whispered, my voice trembling, "I'm scared." His eyes opened slowly, full of emotion so deep it made my heart ache. "So am I," he murmured, "but I won't step back. Not from you." His forehead touched mine, gently, reverently. And in that moment, the bond fully awakened. Not by prophecy, not by magic alone, but by two broken souls recognizing each other across the dark. I didn't understand why Theron brought me to the highest terrace of Nightcrest Castle, not until I stepped into the open air and saw the sky. The moon hung huge and white gold above us, swollen with light, casting silver across the stone until it looked like the entire terrace was carved from frost. The world felt different beneath that moon. Sharper, brighter, as if something inside the night itself was holding its breath. Theron stood behind me, his presence warm and immense. He didn't touch me, but the bond thrummed between us like a second heartbeat. "Lisa," he murmured, "look up." I did, and something inside my chest cracked open. The moon burned brighter the moment my eyes met it, as if it recognized me. A tremor rippled through my body. My fingers curled against the railing, breath quickening. "What's happening?" Theron stepped closer, his voice low, reverent. "You're awakening." My pulse stumbled. I don't know how to shift." "Your wolf knows," he whispered. "You only have to let her." The breeze curled around me, cool, electric, lifting the hair at my temples. A warmth spiraled inside me, low in my abdomen, then surging up my spine like someone had lit a fuse. My skin tingled. My bones ached, but not from pain, from possibility. Theron moved in front of me. His hands cupped my shoulders, grounding me. He searched my face, eyes burning with something fierce and protective. "You're safe," he murmured. "I'm right here. Follow my voice." I swallowed hard, nodding. "Breathe with me," he said softly. So I did. In, out, in, out. The world softened at the edges. The moon seemed to lower itself toward me, pouring light into every crack of my body, illuminating places inside me I'd never dared to look at. Then, the warmth became fire, not burning, awakening. I gasped and doubled over, but Theron caught me, supporting every trembling second. Silver light seeped from my skin, glowing through my veins like liquid moonfire. "Theron." My voice shook. I think I know," he murmured, voice thick with awe. "Let go, Lisa, let her through." My vision blurred into white. My bones stretched. My muscles melted. Something deep inside me surged forward. Not violent, not wild, but ancient, divine. I felt fur erupt across my skin, soft, shimmering, impossibly light. My hearing sharpened until I could hear every heartbeat within the castle. My paws, massive, glowing, touched the stone. Not paws, wings, stars, power. When the shift finished, I lifted my head, and the night gasped. The terrace below filled with wolves, Theron's warriors who must have sensed the surge of energy. They stared up at me, some dropping their weapons, others falling backward in shock. The elder forced a trembling bow. Moon, seer. My fur glowed silver white, radiant as the moon itself. Patterns of starlight rippled along my body, constellations woven through my coat. I wasn't the small, frail Omega they'd mocked. I wasn't weak or hollow or nothing. I was enormous, regal, luminous, a creature carved from ancestral magic and moonlight. A wolf as large as any alpha, larger and brighter than any wolf I'd ever seen. Every wolf below collapsed to their knees. Every single one. But I didn't look at them. I looked at him. Theron. He stood at the edge of the terrace, frozen, eyes wide with awe. His chest rose unevenly like he couldn't breathe. Slowly, reverently, he stepped toward me. His hand, shaking, lifted as if reaching toward something holy. Lisa. My name came out broken. Goddess above. His wolf surged beneath his skin, pressing hard, desperate to kneel before mine. I lowered my head toward him, silver light cascading over the stone like falling stars. He pressed his forehead to mine. A gesture of devotion, of surrender, of sacred recognition. You were born for this, he whispered against my glowing muzzle. Born to rise under the moon. Born to be more than anyone allowed you to be. A soft, ancient sound rumbled in my chest, not a growl, a song, a greeting from a wolf long hidden, a spiritual awakening. Theron's eyes shone with something raw. Love, yes, but also awe. You are her, he whispered, the moon seer reborn. The moon brightened above us, and for the first time in my life, I finally knew. I was exactly where I was meant to be. When the moonlight finally dimmed enough for me to shift back, I stood trembling on the terrace, skin bare of fur but glowing faintly, as if the silver wolf still hovered beneath the surface. My whole body buzzed, my heart thrummed, my soul felt expanded. I wrapped Theron's cloak around myself, breath uneven. He watched me with a reverence that made my stomach flutter, like he didn't dare blink, afraid he'd miss some part of what I'd become. Lysa, he murmured, voice thick with emotion. Look at me. I lifted my eyes, and something inside him seemed to break open. He stepped closer, not like an alpha approaching an omega, not like a king approaching a subject, but like a man stepping toward the truth he'd spent his whole life searching for. His hand rose slowly. May I? My breath caught, but I nodded. His fingertips brushed my cheek. My entire body heated around his touch. No, not heated. Aligned. As if the bond between us snapped tight, humming with purpose. We can't wait any longer, he whispered. The pack has witnessed your awakening. The moonseer has returned. His voice deepened, rough and raw. It is time we complete what fate started. My throat tightened. The scent claim? His eyes flashed gold, the wolf pushing through. Not a claim of possession, he said fiercely. Not Omega, not subordinate. He stepped closer, chest brushing mine. But a claim of equals, of destiny, of moonseer and alpha king. A warmth spilled through my ribs at his words, warmth that felt like recognition, like belonging, like stepping into a future carved just for me. I want to, I whispered. If it's truly what you want to. He let out a shaky exhale like he'd been holding his breath for hours. Lisa, he murmured, lowering his forehead to mine. I have wanted this since the moment your scent reached me in the dirt of that trial. My heart stuttered. You were light in a place I didn't even realize was dark. Then, He tilted my chin gently. The world narrowed to his eyes. The soft night wind, the thudding shared heartbeat between us. Let me mark you as my queen. The word queen hit me like a pulse of molten gold. My pulse fluttered. I'm scared. I am too, he admitted quietly. But the moon doesn't choose lightly. He leaned in, breath warm, against my neck. And when his lips touched the hollow beneath my ear, the bond surged. Silver, gold, moonfire, stormlight. I gasped, gripping his arms as the world tilted. My skin ignited with shimmering light, moonseer magic awakening to meet his alpha fire. His teeth grazed my neck, gentle, reverent, then pressed. Not piercing, not claiming flesh, claiming spirit. A scent mark. Ancient, divine, binding. A rush of energy exploded through me, flooding my veins with heat and moonlight. My knees buckled, and Theron caught me, pulling me flush against him as our scents braided together in the air, cedar and stormwind twining with silver starlight. I could feel it, our bond anchoring, our destinies locking. The moon singing through my blood, whispering at last. Theron's breath shuddered. His forehead dropped to my shoulder. Your scent, he whispered, voice breaking. Moonfire and dusk and something. Goddess Lysa, it's everything. I clutched his shirt, overwhelmed. What does it mean? I breathed. He lifted his head slowly. It means, he said, brushing my cheek with his thumb, you are no longer the Omega they starved. His lips touched mine, soft, aching, reverent. It means, he murmured against my mouth, you are no longer the girl who collapsed in front of them. His hand cupped the side of my neck where his scent now glowed faintly silver gold. It means you are the Moonseer Queen, chosen by destiny, bound to the Alpha King, my equal, my light. The words sank into me, warm and weighty, settling into the parts of me that had always felt empty. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was disappearing. I felt seen, claimed, held, named. Theron gathered me into his arms, pulling me against his chest, the bond between us humming with new, brilliant strength. Lisa, he whispered, voice shaking with something close to worship. You were born for this. Born for me. Born for the moon. And as the moonlight wrapped around us like a blessing, I finally understood. This scent mark wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of the destiny my blood had always waited to rise into. I had never stood on the high dais before. I'd walked past it, swept it, scrubbed it while nobles jeered above me. But I had never once imagined I would stand upon it, bathed in moonlight, the entire Nightcrest pack gathered below like a tide of fur, armor, and breathless anticipation. The moon hung full above us, heavy with silver light. It painted the courtyard in shimmering frost, illuminating every wolf who had once ignored me, mocked me, or pretended I didn't exist. Now they stared at me like I was something impossible, something holy. Theron stood beside me, tall and unyielding, his gaze sweeping over the pack with the controlled fury of a king who has waited his entire life to speak these words. My wolves, he thundered. Silence fell instantly, like the wind, itself stopped to listen. The girl you mocked. His voice deepened, reverberating through stone and bone. Some wolves flinched, others lowered their heads. Guilt rippled through the crowd like a cold wave. The Omega you starved. His hands curled at his sides. The healer you ignored. His gaze sharpened. The girl you forced into a death trial. My chest tightened, remembering dirt beneath my palms, weakness ripping through my body, the sound of my own collapse echoing through the pack. A murmur of shame moved through the ranks. Theron's next words struck like thunder. She is the queen, the moon returned. Gasps broke through the crowd, sharp, breathless. I felt 100 eyes snap to me. Queen. Me. Lisa. The nobody. Lisa. The frail. Lisa. The forgotten. My heart hammered painfully, but the bond between us hummed with steady warmth, grounding me. Theron stepped aside just enough for the moonlight to fall fully onto me. Step forward, he murmured quietly, almost reverently. I took a breath, and did. The moment I moved, silver light uncoiled beneath my skin, soft at first, then growing, blooming outward like a halo. The moon-seer aura shimmered around me, a veil of starlit radiance that lifted the hair on every wolf's neck. Wolves gasped. Some stumbled backward. Others fell to their knees without meaning to. The aura pulsed again. Bright, warm, undeniable. Not human. Not Omega. Not small. Moonseer. Queen. Returned. A soft hum rose from the stone itself like ancient magic recognizing blood long forgotten. I lifted my chin. For once, not in fear, but in belonging. Theron's voice rolled through the courtyard, low and reverent. Behold the moon-seer queen. Every wolf bowed, not one remained standing. Even the nobles who once sneered dropped to their knees. Warriors lowered their heads, elders pressed their foreheads to the ground. The sound of collective submission, armor shifting, paws scraping stone, echoed like a storm passing through the realm. I felt my breath catch. Theron leaned close enough for only me to hear. They bow to you, he murmured, not because I command it, but because they feel your light. Emotion swelled so violently that tears pricked my eyes. I looked over the sea of bowed wolves. So many faces, some familiar, some cruel, some neutral, but now all lowered in respect to someone they once deemed worthless. A ripple of awe moved through them again as the aura brightened, responding to my heartbeat, my breath, my rising sense of place. I didn't hide this time. I didn't shrink. I didn't collapse. I stood taller, letting the moon pour its blessing through my skin. The elder lifted his gaze slowly, reverence softening every line of his face. The moonseer blood rises again, he whispered, and destiny breathes with her. Theron stepped forward, placing his hand, warm, steady, at the small of my back. Lysa, he said, loud enough for the pack to hear, you are the balance our kingdom lost, the light we were blind to, the queen the moon chose long before you ever collapsed at our feet. My vision blurred as the weight of it settled into my bones, and then, Theron took my hand, not as a king claiming a mate, not as an alpha claiming an omega, but as a ruler standing beside his equal. He raised our joined hands toward the sky. Bow, he commanded softly. The pack pressed lower, one unified wave of devotion sweeping across the courtyard. The moon shone brighter, as if bowing too. And in that moment, under silver light and a sea of reverent wolves, I felt something anchored deep inside me. Surrender to who I was meant to be. Belonging to a kingdom that finally saw me. Transformation into the queen destiny placed back into this world. I stood there glowing, trembling, lifted by moonlight and truth. And Nightcrest bowed to its moonseer queen. Months have passed since the night I collapsed in front of the entire pack, the night my body gave out, and everything I thought I knew about myself shattered like brittle glass. Tonight, the moon hangs full again, soft and silver, casting its glow across the royal terrace where I sit curled against Theron's chest. His arms wrap around me, warm and unshakably steady, as if holding me is the most natural thing in the world. Maybe it is. His chin rests atop my hair, breath brushing my temple in slow, content exhales. My fingers trace idle patterns across the back of his hand, feeling the quiet strength there. The strength that once tore through rogues to protect me, the strength that knelt before me in confession, the strength that stood beside me when the pack bowed for the first time. The courtyard below glows with lanterns and shifting wolf forms. The pack gathers often now, drawn by peace instead of conflict, unity instead of division. And sometimes I catch them glancing up at the terrace where we sit, not in scorn, not in disbelief, but with a kind of reverence I never imagined would be directed at me. Tonight is no different. I hear their whispers drifting upward like the soft rustling of leaves. She collapsed before us and rose under the Alpha King's watch. The moon returned her, chose her. Our queen who glows like the past reborn. I close my eyes, letting the words settle into me, not to inflate me, not to crown me, but to remind me of the journey carved through the dark parts of my life, the hunger, the exhaustion, the silence of being unseen. Theron shifts slightly, tightening his arms around me. "What are you thinking about?" he murmurs, voice warm against my ear. I smile faintly. The trial, the day in the courtyard, the way they looked at me. He hums. "With respect, finally. With shock," I correct softly. "And disbelief." "And awe," he adds. "Don't forget awe." I laugh under my breath, quiet, disbelieving, even now. His hand comes up to tilt my chin so he can see my face. "Lisa, they would have lost you. We all would have. Your collapse wasn't weakness." "I know," I whisper. But I let him continue, because the softness in his voice feels like a blessing. "It was fate catching you by the throat," he murmurs, brushing his thumb across my cheek, and reminding the world that the moon-seer blood does not vanish quietly. My breath stutters a little, because the truth of it vibrates inside me, quiet and steady, like the heartbeat of my wolf beneath my skin. My gaze drifts out to the courtyard again. Wolves are settling, shifting into human forms, leaning against each other, laughing, eating, existing without the tension that once suffocated this kingdom. A peace I never imagined I'd witness. A peace I somehow became part of building. I lean back into Theron's chest, listening to the deep, calming rhythm of his heartbeat beneath my ear. He presses a kiss to my shoulder, soft, unhurried, grounding. "Do you remember the moment I carried you?" he asks quietly. I smile against his skin. I remember thinking I was dreaming. "You were half gone." His voice thickens, and I was half out of my mind. I lift my head to look at him. "Theron." He brushes a strand of hair from my face. "I will never forget that moment, Lisa. Seeing you fall, seeing your body give out. Something inside me." He shakes his head. "It broke. And also awakened." I swallow tightly, because even now, months later, the memory still feels like something sacred, raw, terrifying, miraculous. "Do you regret it?" I ask quietly. He stiffens for the briefest moment, then laughs under his breath, low and incredulous. "Regret?" He pulls me closer, his forehead resting against mine. "Lisa, that was the moment fate shoved you into my arms and said, 'She's yours.'" My cheeks warm, but I don't look away. He kisses the corner of my mouth, a gentle, lingering promise. "It was never failure," he murmurs. My eyes burn, but not with pain. I look up at the moon, the same moon that watched me collapse, the same moon that lit my first shift, the same moon that marked me as something more than what the world forced me to be. "Theron," I whisper, voice breaking with quiet understanding. "It was fate." My hands curl into his tunic. It was fate catching me by the throat. I breathe out shakily, and saying, "Rise." Below us, the pack howls, not in fear, not in mourning, but in unity, in reverence, in celebration. Theron pulls me fully into his arms as the sound washes over us. And under the moonlight, wrapped in the scent of the Alpha King who couldn't step back, I finally let myself accept it. I wasn't the girl who collapsed. I was the queen who rose.